We're doing it again, fellas. We're making a new Spider-Man suit, completely from scratch, and we've got 2 weeks to do it. So, let's just get right into it here. Of course, the first thing anybody needs for a good Spider-Man suit is fabrics. So, for the red fabric, I'm just going to go with a basic 4-way stretch, bright red, textureless spandex, nothing too crazy. It'll be linked in the description in case anybody wants to use it. And for the blue, I've got like a super shiny, super glossy royal blue spandex, and I'm hoping that the shininess of it will help me emulate that comic shading that shows up a lot of the time, because everybody knows in the Spider-Man world that it's really hard to get that effect in real life, and I still don't think it's going to be obviously one-to-one, but I think it's going to help, and I think it's certainly going to look better in some lighting than basic blue spandex would. So with that out of the way, let's get started.
So I started off this suit in the same place I always do, which is making the sewing patterns. To do this, I grabbed all the patterns I made for my version 2 suit and retraced them onto big sheets of blank paper. After that, I fixed up some flaws in the fit of the pattern, the most glaring issue being the placement of the shoulder seam. On the old suit, it was too broad, so along with stretching out the neck in a goofy way, the armpit areas of the shirt stretched way out anytime I lifted my arms. So to remedy this, I just moved the seam in narrower so it'll sit more comfortably under my arm and actually ride up past my clavicles instead of going around my delts. I also started fresh with the layout of the red and blue sections, as well as the web pattern. In particular, I wanted those oblique sections there to start to widen out earlier on to help fake that V-taper that I do not have. Like I said, I also switched up the webbing pattern, making it more sparse and rounding out the arches a little more, taking inspiration from the way Mark Bagley draws the suit. I also added a collar seam around the neck with the hope of minimizing wrinkles in that area. After that was all done, I got right to work tracing all the webs out on the red fabric, starting at the shirt. I did this the same way as last time by putting a big old picture frame over a flashlight and then tracing the webs onto the fabric, which I stuck over each pattern piece. I did the blue pieces the same way, except without the webs, of course. One thing I found came in handy for the blue pieces was to trace the outline of each piece on both sides of the fabric using the picture frame rig, just to make it easier to know where I should be sewing since I understitched all the seams, meaning everything was sewed while the suit was inside out. After that, I just pinned everything together and then started sewing. Make sure you don't stretch out the fabric while you're sewing, because that'll make it turn out all wonky and mess up your stitches. I also double stitched all the seams and quadruple stitched them on the legs just to make sure no seams fall apart or split or whatever. So the process I just described there is what about 90% of the costume making time is spent on, and it's all the same for each piece. It can get boring, but when nothing goes wrong during the process, it's actually pretty chill to just sit upstairs and sew for hours on end while you rewatch all the old Spider-Man movies. So once I got the shirt all sewn up, I decided it was time to do the logos. These were what I sketched up, and I got right to work on the front one. The way I do front logos is simply to cut out the template, carefully trace it in place with a fine point Sharpie, and then fill it in with a big Sharpie. I did the back logo differently than my usual method of puffy painting, but I'll talk about all that later. The boots were made similar to last time, only this time I used water shoe soles instead of flip-flop ones, so hopefully those will look cooler and work better. Obviously, I made the mask the exact same way I always do, so I won't be covering it, but there are tons of guys out there who make them in similar ways, and there are lots of videos to choose from. I'd specifically recommend checking out Brian Owsley and Probably Spider-Man for more info on masks. Those guys are awesome, and I've learned tons from them. With that said, once everything was all sewn up and put together, the suit was finished. Actually, I also sewed in Velcro closures around the shirt and the pants the same way as last time. So, there's that, although I didn't actually go over that in the original video because I lost the footage. But it's pretty simple, just put the Velcro on the shirt, sew it on there, and then you can stick the other side of the Velcro onto that and then map out where it's going to go on the pants and then just sew it onto there. Now the suit's done.
Okay, so the suit is finished. Almost. So, you guys might have noticed I didn't record nearly as much of the making process as I did in the first costume I made. So, there's a couple reasons behind that. Number one, I started this suit once again 2 weeks before I wanted to have it done, that being Halloween. So, this time around I was too lazy to record everything I was doing. And number two, the making of process of this suit is almost the same as the first one I made, the Liverpool one. So, I didn't think it was really necessary to record too much of it, because it's just the same thing you guys have seen. That being said, there were a couple things I did different, which we are going to talk about here. So to start off that, we've got a new back logo here, new back logo style. So the way I did this, as opposed to the original puffy paint, is I took some craft foam, like 2mm craft foam, cut out the logo, and then wrapped it in the same fabric I used for the shirt. That way everything would match up perfectly, and then kind of stitched around. I actually had to hand sew to get it onto the back. That took about 3 hours, I want to say. But I think it looks a lot better than the original puffy painting method, which, as you can see, has not aged well during its shelf life here. And also, it doesn't really match up as well with the darker red that I've got on this costume. So it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb and just looks like something a child did. So, yeah, that being said, that's the new back logo, and other than that, that's I did the whole bodysuit pretty much the same way. So, the other thing I did different is the boots. Now, these were a little bit less of a drastic change than the back logo. I just used a different type of sole to glue onto the boot. I still use the same glue, the barge cement, and then the Gorilla Glue touch-ups around the edges and everything. But this is the old boot, as you can see. It's made of an EVA foam flip-flop, which I used before on my very first costume, the old one. All you OGs remember. It works fine and it looks okay, but it's not super practical, it's not the most comfortable, and it's definitely not the most grippy. So what I did this time around is I used a water shoe. So this is like a rubber sole, and it's got a bit more of a lip that goes all the way around, so it kind of holds my foot in place more when I'm wearing the suit. And I think it looks nicer too. It looks more like a shoe, and it's got that grippy texture on it, so that helps out a lot. The other thing, web shooters. So I made web shooters for the suit, and these ones are pretty special because I made them in a computer-aided designing class in my school, actually. So for a final project for a unit, I designed and printed these things, painted them up, and they look pretty cool. So you might be able to see in the bottom, there's these divots here, and that's supposed to be for Velcro. So I haven't got around to doing that yet, that's why I said almost done. But eventually these are gonna stick onto the gloves like that, and they're gonna look pretty cool. So yeah, so that's about it for the construction of the suit. So there's not really that much left to talk about, other than I'm really happy with this suit, and I like the way it turned out. I am a pretty big fan of the super shiny blue. I have noticed that when it's adequately stretched out, it doesn't look as shiny on camera. So when you got all these wrinkles in here, like when I'm just holding it, it looks real nice. But some of that shine kind of gets lost in the camera when it's actually stretched out on my body. But I still think it looks pretty cool, and I still think that the shade of blue matches pretty nicely and goes pretty well with the red that I chose. So, also the logos. I talked about how I did them, but you might have noticed they're more pointy. The old suit had more of kind of classic style logos with the boxier legs and stuff, but I tried to do my best to get the front logo and the back logo to have some synergy. So the points here, whatever the heck they're called, the legs, they've got kind of a similar style to them. So I think it looks pretty cool, and I think it looks nice. I think it goes well with the shininess of the suit, the kind of spikier logos. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say here.